Yeah, thank you very much. Pleasure to be here and to talk about PPAs to you, a topic that is really close to my heart, actually. And yeah, my name is Annkathrin Rabe, and I'm working for Statkraft, which is a Norwegian energy company. And I'm happy to tell you today about a solution how you can go green by procuring more renewable power. And let me start with talking a little bit about Statkraft and what we do, and then I'll talk a bit about different renewable power solutions and deep dive into guarantees of origin and power purchase agreements, PPAs, and then tell you a little bit about examples of PPAs in Germany. Okay, so to start with Statkraft, we are a Norwegian renewable energy company. Our portfolio is more than 90% renewable only, and we have around 65 terawatt hours around the world. And a large part of that is, of course, renewables. A lot of hydropower is in there, but also wind and solar power. And these are really the areas we are growing a lot in. For example, we want to build 8,000 megawatts of new wind and solar assets until 2025. And we are on the one hand developing our own renewable power assets and operating our own assets. And at the same time, we are also a trader, so we also buy renewable power. And with that, we want to be very flexible to offer customers exactly the amount of green power from the preferred technology, be it wind, solar, or hydropower, at the exact right time when someone is ready to procure green power. Yeah, we are 125 years old. We belong to the Norwegian state. And next to green power solutions like PPAs and guarantees of origin, we also offer access to the energy market. So you could also buy power via us at the spot market or the forward market or the intraday. And you can also get e-mobility or hydrogen solutions from us. Okay, that's it on Statkraft. And here also our purpose. So this is what we're standing for. We want to power a green future. And our values are competence, responsibility, and innovation. And then let me start with different ways of how you can go green, how you can buy renewable power. Here on the slide, you can see three options. There are guarantees of origin, green certificates, investment in self-consumption, and power purchase agreements. And guarantees of origins are basically green certificates that you can buy unbundled from the power, so certificates only, to turn your power consumption green. That's how green certificates work. And then in terms of self-consumption, you can install solar power or wind power close to your plant. So for example, solar power on your rooftop, or maybe if you have land available, also a wind farm close to your asset, and connect that with a direct cable. This is self-consumption for your own green power. And with PPAs, you can buy green power from a specified renewable asset, and in that case, you're buying the green certificate with the power. And with that, you can have a pretty meaningful impact also on the energy transition, because you can enable, for example, new renewable assets to be built without any subsidies, or you can help assets that are running out of the subsidy scheme to stay online. So looking at the pros and cons of these different solutions, guarantees of origin are pretty simple way of how you can get green. It's not that complex to buy guarantees of origin. You can basically buy them from any trader, but also your energy supplier. And compared to your power costs, it's also a pretty inexpensive solution. The disadvantages are that maybe the impact you can really have on the energy transition is rather limited. And yeah, also credibility is sometimes discussed. But this has been really the standard way of how you can buy renewable power in the past. And then we also have self-consumption, which is also a nice solution. It's pretty credible because you're building new renewable assets close to your plant. It's very visible also for your employees to see that you're going green. So it's a really nice solution. But the disadvantages are that, yeah, of course, you have to have the space available. Your rooftops have to be strong enough for solar assets to be built on. And the scalability is also limited because usually there's only a certain amount of rooftops or land available. So from my experience in the past when talking to customers about such solutions, usually you can cover maybe 5% of your power consumption. But that depends, of course, how big your power consumption is. And last but not least, we have power purchase agreements, which are a pretty credible solution. You can have a really meaningful impact on the energy transition and make sense not only from a sustainability perspective, but also from an economic financial perspective, because you can hedge against rising and volatile power prices and also GOO prices. And I can tell you from my experience, our customers that we signed PPAs with in the last months or last year are pretty happy at the moment with the power prices being so high. And the good thing about PPAs is you can scale it. So you can also cover 10% of your demand, but also 100%. So you can really meet your entire power demand with PPAs if you want to. And looking into how do GOOs actually work. So the setup of the GOO market works like this. We basically have a big power lake where gray power and green power is fed into from all the different power sources, from conventional power sources, but also renewable power sources. And you as a household, as a consumer, but also as a company, you will always get a power mix out of the plug. The only way how you could make sure that your power is really physically, all the electrons are 100% green, would be if you would have a direct cable connection between a renewable asset and your plant. And since this is not always economical, we have the power lake and we have guarantees of origin that are the tracking mechanism to show that the power you consume is green. So even though guarantees of origin might sometimes be criticized a little bit, it is really, as a mechanism, the only system we have, and it's a good mechanism, the way it works. You can, of course, always pay attention to what kind of green power you consume or what kind of guarantees of origin you consume. And guarantees of origin are traded across the AIB market in Europe. So as you can see here on the map, we have across the AIB markets, which are around 25 countries in Europe, you can trade those guarantees of origin. So for your consumption in Germany, you could buy a GOO from Spain, or you could buy a GOO from Norway, because we have one common market. That's how it works. There are some countries, also some EU countries, which are not part of the system, like the UK and Poland are two examples, where you can only buy domestic GOOs. So that's how GOOs work. And how do PPAs work? In very simple terms, we as a supplier, Statkraft, provide green power to you as the off-taker, the buyer. And we provide you with the power, so we transfer the power into the balancing circle of your company or the balancing circle of your full supply provider. And this is how the power arrives at your company. And then we cancel the guarantees of origin with the GOO register. In Germany, this is the Herkunftsnachweisregister, the GO register of the Umweltbundesamt, the Federal Environmental Agency. And this needs to be done so that on the power report that you get at the end of the year, the so-called Stromkennzeichnung, you can show that your power is actually green. Yeah, and then you pay the PPA price. So that's in very simple terms how a PPA works. It's in the end just a power delivery contract, and it's actually pretty standard. So you can also, in many of your power contracts, you sometimes have third-party volumes which are possible. So you can also buy power from someone else than your full supply provider, and this can be a PPA. And yeah, looking at the PPA market a little bit, we've seen really a big growth of PPAs all across the globe. Primarily, it started off in the US already as early as 2013. And that was primarily because in the US, companies got tax incentives to buy green power, because then they had some tax reductions if they would procure renewable power. And after a while, those US companies, primarily big tech companies, also realized that buying green power also makes sense without the US tax incentives, and they started to procure green power also over here in Europe. And that's how PPAs arrived in Europe as well. And yeah, we have a growing trend of PPAs now, also in Europe. In 2020, already 7 gigawatts of renewable assets were sold via PPAs. And looking here at Europe, you can see that Germany is actually number 2 in terms of PPAs. This is a graphic from Schneider Electric, which shows how many megawatts of PPAs were signed in 2020. And even though 2020 was quite an uncommon year, we've still seen a very big increase in PPAs signed. Spain is, yeah, the clear front runner. This is because Spain is just a really good market for renewables. We have a lot of sun, we have a lot of wind, so the resources are really good. But at the same time, the regulation, the subsidies of renewables is just very different. There are less subsidies, so more renewables are developed on a merchant basis without subsidy, and then can be sold in PPAs. Okay. Yeah, and what are the reasons why a PPA makes sense? Basically, there are 3 main areas that you can look into: sustainability, economics, and also marketing. And from a sustainability perspective, you can reduce CO2 under scope 2, so turn your power consumption green. You can have a really credible impact on the energy transition. You can still be one of the front runners. Yeah, we have seen PPAs already signed, but you can still show that you're really going ahead if you are turning a substantial amount of your power demand green with a PPA. And yeah, we've also talked about ESG ratings yesterday, and yeah, with PPAs you can also improve your ESG ratings. And on the economic side, you can hedge against rising power prices. So how a PPA usually works is that you have a fixed price for a certain amount of power over the tenor of the contract, and yeah, with that you can lock in a certain power price, and then you're not exposed to volatile or rising power prices on the market. And you can also hedge against rising GOO prices, which is sometimes forgotten, but GOO prices have also been very bullish in the past weeks and months, and with the PPA you get both power and GOs. Yeah. And yeah, if you're a company with investors, you can also attract relevant investors. There's some companies like BlackRock, for example, who've also made very public announcement about investing more in renewable companies instead of coal. Yeah. And then in terms of marketing, if you're a company that is active in the B2C business, you can also use PPAs to communicate to your customers that you're going green and strengthen your customer relationship. And yeah, we're actually seeing also that also in some B2B areas, customers are demanding from their supplier that they have a credible green strategy and are going into PPAs as well. Yeah. And last but not least, you can also increase the attractiveness of your company as an employer, in the war for talents. And now to dive a little bit deeper into different PPA structures, because PPAs are sometimes a little bit complex because you can really tailor them to your company. So to, on the one hand, your purchasing strategy, how you want to procure green power, but also your sustainability strategy and your demand profile. Yeah. And the big two differences with PPAs are physical PPAs and virtual PPAs. In a physical PPA, the main difference is that with a physical PPA, you get the power. So you get the guarantees of origin and the power. And in a virtual PPA, you don't get the power. A virtual PPA is basically only a financial instrument, but you get the guarantees of origin so that you can still show that you're green. So in a virtual PPA, we as Statkraft, we would sell the power on the spot market for spot prices. And between us and our power contract, we have a contract for difference, a CFD. So we would settle on a certain reference price, let's say 50 euros per megawatt hour. And whenever the power prices on the spot market are above 50 euros, so we can actually earn more, but you are also exposed to higher power prices, we settle the difference and pay that delta to you. And vice versa, when the power prices on the spot market are below our reference price, we earn less, but you also benefit from lower power prices, you pay the difference to us. So in the end, we are hedged with the fixed price that we have agreed on. This is how the contract for difference works. So with a virtual PPA, you are hedged against rising power prices like in a physical PPA, but you don't actually get the power supply. So your full supply contract is not impacted by a PPA. In general, we can say that virtual PPAs are pretty common in the US because this is also a really big market, and it's not always possible to really physically deliver the power to a customer. But in Germany, we see primarily physical PPAs. That just so that you've heard what the difference actually is between those two structures. And now, to dive a little bit deeper into PPAs, here's an overview of all the different features, topics that you can talk about when tailoring a PPA to your company. And one of the first topics you can talk about is the share. So how much of your power consumption do you want to cover in a PPA? Shall it be 5%, 10%, 100%? So that's usually one of the first topics we talk about. And then we look at the start date. When do you want the PPA to start? Shall it be next year already, in 2022, or maybe in 2023 or afterwards? That's also relevant and also has an impact on the price, of course. And then we talk about the different technologies. Shall the PPA be based on solar, on wind, on hydropower, or maybe a combination of different technology sources? And which sources are actually available in the market that you're looking at. So what we usually do here is we analyze your demand profile, and we match that then with the production profile of different renewable assets to analyze which size, how many megawatts of renewables, and which kind of technologies fit best into your demand profile. Maybe you're a company who is producing primarily during daytime. For example, retail companies often have such a demand profile. So they have lots of big spikes during the day. Then maybe a solar profile fits actually really, really well. Or you're a company that is actually producing pretty stable all year round, day and night. Then maybe a combination of wind and solar plus hydropower fits best because then we can cover really a substantial amount. So that's the technology. Then we can also talk about the tenor, the duration of a contract. Shall it be 1 year, 5 years, 10 years? Different tenors are possible depending on the technology that we go for. And then we also talk about the delivery profile. So how shall we actually deliver the power to you? Shall it be as produced? So as the renewable asset is producing in every hour, so really following the production profile of a renewable asset, or pretty similar to that, as forecasted. And as forecasted delivery structure, we deliver the day ahead forecast, so the prognosis. That usually makes it a little bit easier for your full supply provider to integrate the power into your full supply concept. Alternatives to that are the typical standard baseload block that you might be used to already from normal power procurement. Or you can also become a little bit more creative and create a synthetic profile, which can be a standard solar or wind profile. So a fixed profile that is normal for a solar or wind asset. Okay, and then last but not least, you can talk about the price mechanism. Do you want to have a fixed price, which makes sense if you want to also hedge against power prices? Or do you want to have an indexed price, for example, indexed to the spot market, so that you really go with the flow and you follow all the market price developments, which makes sense if you don't want to hedge. So these are all topics that you need to consider when designing the PPA that fits to your power purchasing strategy and sustainability targets and demand profile. And now I'd like to turn to what we as Statkraft can offer in terms of GOs and PPAs, and then talk also a bit about our examples. So in terms of GOs, we offer GOs basically from all across Europe, many of the AIB markets, also different technologies, as you can see here on the map. And we also offer different labels. And labels are basically something you can put on top of a green certificate or a PPA to prove different things, to prove the environmental friendliness of a renewable asset. For example, OK Power and Eco Energy have certain criteria and check that a renewable asset has not been built in a natural resort, or that there's fish protection for hydropower. Or there are also TÜV labels, like the TÜV EE01 or EE02 labels, which show that the renewable asset is actually a new asset, or that there is a time match between your consumption and the power production, so that you're really consuming power at the same time when renewable power is produced. Exactly, and these labels you can also then use for your communication measures or to print on your products. Exactly. So that's something you can put on top if you like. And then, there are different shades of green you can talk about when talking about guarantees of origin. These different shades have a different green value. For example, you can buy GOs without a label. This is basically the simple way. Then you can buy GOs with a label. That already makes it a little bit better, more credible. Or you can buy GOs really from the same region where you're consuming power. So to have this regional match. So to say, if you consume in Germany, you buy GOs from Germany. And last but not least, you can buy GOs from new local assets, so from a new asset in Germany. And in terms of PPAs, we also offer PPAs all across Europe, also from various technologies. And we can structure the PPA based on your preferences. To come to Germany a little bit, in Germany you can buy GOs and PPAs from basically all 4 main renewable technologies. solar power, wind, and hydropower. When talking about solar power, these are usually new assets. So assets that are then built based on the financing of the PPA, completely without any subsidy. And this is also why the tenor, the duration of such a PPA contract is usually around 10 years or maybe even longer. Because this is really required for the asset to get the financing to be built without any subsidy. Sometimes we can see now already some solar assets that are also available for a shorter duration. And this is when the solar asset has actually received financing via the EEG subsidy scheme, but they are seeing pretty high power prices at the moment, so they are deciding to exit the EEG subsidy scheme. And then, because they have this flexibility, so they can then exit the subsidy scheme for a couple of years, sell the power via PPA, and then after a while reconsider whether they want to go back into subsidy or sell on the market. So the standard for solar in Germany is 10 years, but the situation is changing a little bit at the moment. And then we also have wind onshore. For wind onshore, PPAs are primarily possible with existing assets that are already in operation and are now dropping out of the subsidy scheme after 20 years. And technically, they're still in a good shape. They can run for maybe 25 years. So there are another 5 years where they can operate and sell the power on the market. So these are the first wind PPAs that have already been signed in the market. We don't see any PPAs with new wind assets yet, because wind assets that are repowered or that are completely new all go into subsidy. They still get a pretty good rate in the auctions, around 60 euros per megawatt hour, and the auctions are also undersubscribed, so the assets actually all get the highest price. So it's still, at the moment, more attractive to go into the subsidy scheme than to sell on the market. But let's see how power prices will develop. Maybe that will change as well. Then we also have wind offshore. Here we have new or existing assets. We have existing assets that can decide to drop out of subsidy maybe in 2024 or 2025, because wind offshore assets have received a pretty high subsidy level for a number of years. And then as of 2024, some of them actually fall down to a much lower subsidy level. And then many of them also decide to exit the subsidy scheme. But this will happen only in a few years. And likewise, we also have new offshore assets that are developed for like subsidy of 0 euros per megawatt hour, so they are then also available for the market and for PPAs. And last but not least, we have hydropower. There are few assets in Germany which are not subsidized and therefore then also available for PPAs, because only unsubsidized assets in Germany receive GOOs and can then be used for PPAs. So these are the technologies that are available in Germany. And we as Statkraft, we combine the volatile renewables like solar and wind with hydropower. And with that flexibility, we can then also make sure that your company is turned green not only on an annual basis, but in real time. So 24/7, all around the clock, on a quarter-hourly basis. And this is how we do it. We look at your demand profile. We match it with the production of solar and wind that fits well to your profile. We match it with some baseload structures, as much baseload as you want to, because maybe this is the way you want to hedge. And this is a green baseload with hydropower. And then we fill up the gaps with flexible GOOs from our flexible hydropower assets. So in such a combination, we can make sure that you are green 24/7. And here are a few examples of PPAs that we have signed across Europe. And in Germany, those are the companies that we are now supplying with green power. And here's a quick overview of these PPAs. So with Mercedes-Benz, Daimler, we have implemented this 24/7 solution already. So Mercedes-Benz and Daimler, they are now splitting up in two companies, they are becoming green 24/7. And then we have a couple of solar PPAs with Bosch or Naturstrom and Technische Werke Schussenthal. So you can see here that, really many different PPA structures are possible, different technologies, different tenors, different amounts. Yeah, and this is my last slide. So here are a few key steps that you can consider on your way to a PPA. So some topics maybe for inspiration if this topic of PPAs is of interest for you. First of all, you can look at what are your requirements for a PPA, and then we can develop together a PPA structure that fits really to your targets and your profile. And last but not least, the PPA contract, where some details like the delivery process, the invoicing process are discussed. Yeah. And that's it. Thank you very much. And looking forward to discussing PPAs later with you.